John wakes up in a strange hotel room, confused and disoriented. He looks in the mirror and notices a deep wound on his forehead, but he has no idea how it got there. As he searches the room for clues about himself, he finds a set of keys and a briefcase. Inside the briefcase, there are some clothes and a postcard from a place called Shell Beach. The postcard stirs a faint memory of visiting that place as a child. Suddenly, the phone rings, startling him. He hesitates but eventually picks it up. On the other end, a man named Dr. Daniel speaks in a hurried voice, warning John that his memory was erased after a failed experiment, and now some dangerous men are after him. He tells John to leave immediately. John tries to ask more, but the doctor hangs up. Nervous, John scans the room again and notices something behind the bed. To his horror, he discovers a dead woman lying there, covered in spiral-like scars with blood still fresh. On a nearby table, he spots a blood-stained knife. Panic sets in and he rushes out of the room. He steps into a dimly lit hallway and realizes he's in a hotel. He tries to take the elevator, but it stops midway, and a group of pale, menacing figures step in. Frightened, John dashes down the stairs instead. When he reaches the lobby, he's surprised to see that everyone there is asleep. Suddenly, the clock strikes midnight, and as if by magic, everyone wakes up acting as though nothing strange had happened. The receptionist calls out to John, reminding him that he's been staying there for 3 weeks and will need to pay if he wants to stay longer. John quickly glances at the reservation book and learns his own name and address. Armed with this new information, he leaves the hotel and walks through the streets. As he walks, he notices something odd. His fingertips have faint spiral patterns. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, the receptionist goes to clean John's room, but he's met by the pale figures, the strangers. They find a mysterious syringe on the floor, and after questioning the receptionist, put him to sleep when he tells them John already left. Elsewhere, Emma, a singer at a local bar, finishes her performance. A co-worker hands her a card left by someone claiming to be her husband's doctor. Emma follows the address and meets Dr. Daniel. She explains that her husband, John, disappeared weeks ago after a fight. Daniel tells her that John is suffering from a psychotic break and complete memory loss. He asks Emma to call him if John contacts her. Back at the hotel, police arrive to investigate the murder with John as the main suspect. At the same time, Emma reports her missing husband to the police, only to learn he may be a killer. Meanwhile, John, now wandering the streets, enters a restaurant that seems familiar. The server recognizes him and reminds him that he forgot his wallet a few days ago. Before he can process this, 2 officers enter the restaurant. John panics, and without understanding how, he activates a strange power that shatters a nearby window. Grabbing his wallet, he tries to leave but is stopped by the officers. Just then, a woman named May intervenes, claiming to know him. She takes John to her apartment. At May's apartment, while she changes, John checks his wallet and finds a photo of Emma, which triggers more fragmented memories. Unsettled, he quickly leaves. As he wanders the city, he sees a large sign advertising Shell Beach, just like the postcard in his briefcase. Curious, he checks his pockets and finds several newspaper clippings about recent murders. Before he can process this, the strangers appear and attempt to put him to sleep using their powers, but it doesn't work. John is immune. In the ensuing struggle, he kills one of the strangers and sees a gooey creature emerge from the corpse. Terrified, he runs away. At the stranger's hideout, they discuss John's strange abilities. Unlike ordinary people, he can resist their power and even use tuning, the same ability they use to manipulate the city. They decide to hunt him down personally. Meanwhile, John visits Emma at her apartment. Though he doesn't remember her, he explains that he found her address in the hotel book and used the keys he had. Emma gives him Dr. Daniel's card and tells him about their past, including how he left after discovering she was having an affair. John, however, doubts he's the killer because he felt no violent urges while with May. As they talk, John notices a police car outside and tries to escape, but Detective Frank arrives to arrest him. Emma helps John escape by pushing Frank, allowing him to jump to the lower floors and flee. Frank gives chase but loses John when he mysteriously creates a door on a solid wall and disappears. Frank finds Daniel's card on the ground and decides to visit the doctor. John follows Frank to Daniel's building, watching from a distance as Frank tries to question the doctor. Daniel, however, refuses to give away any information. After Frank leaves, John confronts Daniel, demanding answers. Daniel finally explains that the strangers have the power to reshape the city and erase people's memories. John, however, has somehow developed the same power, which makes him a threat to them. That night, the strangers inject one of their own, Mr. Hand, with a serum containing John's memories. This allows Mr. Hand to track John's movements by reliving his experiences. Meanwhile, John discovers that the postcard from Shell Beach is signed by someone named Carl Harris, whose name was also on the briefcase. Following this clue, he finds an address and takes the subway to get there. On the subway, he spots Shell Beach on the map and decides to go there instead. But no matter what train he takes, he can't find a way to reach the outer stations. Frustrated, he asks a guard for directions, but a man named Eddie overhears and tells him there's no way out of the city. He's tried before. Eddie explains that he used to be a cop and hints that the strangers constantly swap people's memories and professions, but the people themselves remain unaware of it. Eddie, a former cop, explains to John that he remembers things others don't because he woke up in the middle of the stranger's mysterious process, just like John did. As they talk, Eddie reveals he has discovered a possible way out of the city. Before John can react, a train rushes by, killing Eddie on the spot. John watches in horror, realizing how dire his situation has become. Meanwhile, the strangers track John to Emma's apartment. There, they reflect on the concept of memories, wondering if memories truly define who a person is. Mr. Hand, now carrying John's memories, experiences vivid flashes of John's life with Emma. After gathering what he needs, he leaves Emma's place. Emma, worried about John, visits May's apartment, only to find May's lifeless body scarred with eerie spiral marks. Before Emma can flee, Frank, the detective, arrives and arrests her on suspicion of involvement in the murders. They search May's apartment and find May's daughter hiding under the bed, clutching a drawing of strange, pale men, the strangers. Meanwhile, John finally finds the address of a man named Carl Harris, whom he believes holds clues to his past. He enters the dimly lit apartment and is startled when Carl threatens him with a gun. However, Carl quickly lowers his weapon upon recognizing John. Carl reveals he's John's uncle and shows him old family photos, including ones of their hometown, Shell Beach. John is shocked to realize that in this city, the sun never rises. It's always dark. While looking through the photos, John notices a scar he should have from a childhood fire isn't on his arm anymore. It dawns on him that his entire life could be a lie. That night, while John tries to process everything, Carl secretly calls Emma to tell her where John is. Overhearing the conversation, John flees the apartment through the window. Emma informs Frank, and together they head to Carl's place. Mr. Hand, who has been following them, waits for the right moment. At midnight, the clock strikes 12, and once again, everyone in the city falls into a deep sleep, except for John. The city begins its eerie transformation as buildings shift and reshape. The strangers find John and attempt to stop him by twisting the stairs beneath his feet. John races across rooftops, leaping from building to building as the city transforms around him. Suddenly, Mr. Hand blocks John's path. They fight, and John manages to knock him down, stealing his knife. Holding the blade to Mr. Hand's throat, John demands answers. Mr. Hand reveals that the strangers are aliens who kidnap humans to study them. Every night, they alter people's memories and switch their lives to observe human behavior. Their ultimate goal is to discover what gives humans their individuality, their souls. The strangers share a hive mind and are desperate to understand humanity before their race dies out. Hand also discloses that the gooey creatures John previously saw are the strangers in their true form, inhabiting human corpses as vessels. Their conversation is cut short when the roof beneath them starts transforming. Both fall, but John manages to grab onto a balcony while Mr. Hand is swept away by the shifting buildings. Exhausted but determined, John escapes by breaking into a nearby room. More strangers arrive, but John outmaneuvers them, eventually finding a way down to the streets. In the alley below, John is cornered by the strangers. Fortunately, Frank and Emma arrive just in time to help him escape. At the police station, Frank interrogates John. When John points out that the city lacks sunlight and that no one seems to remember how they got there, Frank remains skeptical. Frustrated, John uses his powers to levitate a book in front of Frank, shocking the detective into believing him. Afterward, John shares a heartfelt moment with Emma, explaining that although their memories may be false, her love feels real. They kiss before John is taken away by the police. Before anything more can happen, the strangers storm the station, putting all the officers to sleep. Frank tries to resist but is quickly overpowered. Furious, Mr. Hand kills the captain and orders a full search for John. Meanwhile, John escapes and meets Dr. Daniel Schreiber once again. This time, Daniel reveals the whole truth. The city is an experiment created by the strangers, who abducted humans from Earth and built this artificial world to study their behavior. Each night, they wipe people's memories and rearrange their lives, hoping to understand what makes humans unique. With no time to lose, Frank, John, and Daniel head toward the edge of the city, hoping to find Shell Beach. When they reach a river, they discover the bridge has vanished. Determined to continue, they take a boat. As they row across, Daniel warns them there is nothing beyond the city. Ignoring him, John and Frank keep going until they reach a wall with a Shell Beach sign. Together, they break through it, only to find outer space on the other side, confirming that the city is a floating structure in the void. Suddenly, the strangers arrive, capturing both John and Emma. Frank fights bravely but is thrown into space along with a stranger, dying instantly. Desperate to protect Emma, John surrenders. He wakes up strapped to a machine inside the stranger's lair. The leader announces that John will be imprinted with a stranger's consciousness to merge their minds. However, Daniel secretly injects John with a different serum, one that unlocks John's full potential. John's eyes snap open, glowing with newfound power. Using his abilities, he destroys the machine and sends the strangers flying. The leader retaliates, and an intense battle ensues, with buildings crumbling around them. John gains the upper hand, sending the leader crashing into a water tank. The leader's gooey true form emerges and disintegrates in the air. With the strangers defeated, Daniel tells John that Emma no longer exists. Her memories were rewritten during the last tuning. Heartbroken but determined, John uses his powers to reshape the city. He creates an ocean surrounding the city and raises a bright sun in the sky for the first time. Meanwhile, Emma, now called Anna, wakes up with no memory of John but feels drawn to Shell Beach. John meets her near the ocean, and though she doesn't recognize him, she invites him for a walk along the shore. Together, they set off toward the horizon with hope finally shining over the city. I hope you enjoyed today's story, my friend. Subscribe and drop a like to return for future videos. Check out the recommendations on the right to continue your binge. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.